Welcome to another Ret Paladin video. Varaben here. Today we're going to be looking at the legendary abilities that are available in Shadowlands, and we're going to tier them. And just as a brief recap for what I mean by these two different tiers, S tier means it is good in every situation. It's just a really good all-around one that's just excellent for PvP, for raiding, for Mythic Plus. A means it's really good in one or the other. But it may be situational in certain situations. B means it's pretty good, or it's kind of good across the board, but it's just not really game changing. C means it's just kind of okay in certain situations, and D means it's garbage. So we're going to go through the generic legendaries first, and as a reminder, here's the 4 general legendary ones. We have From Dusk Till Dawn, which gives you the 6% more damage and healing and 6% damage reduction at 5 holy power and 0 holy power. And then, so we're going to go line by line through these. So this one I actually really like. I think this one is really good because I think you're going to constantly be at 5 holy power or 0 holy power, and you're going to be hitting those kind of things back and forth. So I think this one's actually really good, and I think because of how it works, it's going to be good in every sort of situation. It's not really game changing. It doesn't change your rotation or anything like that, really. But I am going to put this into S tier because I think that it's going to be good all around. The next one is Liadrin's Fury Reborn. It means casting Avenging Wrath or any forbearance ability grants 5 holy power. I think this one is kind of generically good all around. In a lot of situations, you're going to be casting those forbearance abilities, the Divine Shield, the Blessing of Protection, the Avenging Wrath, or Lay on Hands. So I think it's pretty good. 5 holy power is not all that great. There's a lot of ways to generate a lot of holy power, so I'm going to put this one in a B tier. Next one is the Magistrate's Judgment. Judgment has a 50% chance to reduce the cost of your next holy power spender by 1. I don't think this one is very good, to be honest. A 50% chance, if I'm using up my legendary spot, I kind of expect it to have a really good benefit, and I think a 50% chance is just not that great. It is kind of all around useful, but I think the benefit is pretty minimal, so I'm going to put this one as a C tier. So this next one is one I'm really excited about. If you see my video on Ret Paladin mobility and Shadowlands, I think this one is going to be an absolute game changer in PvP. Now in PvE, it's not going to be all that great. It's going to be definitely beneficial to have more Blessing of Sacrifices, more Blessing of Protections, especially in Mythic Plus and World Quests and stuff like that. If you're doing like small group content, I think it's going to be good. But in PvP, to help with mobility, I think the Blessing of Freedom, having getting 1 second per holy power spent, getting that cooldown reduced, I think is going to be enormous because Blessing of Freedom only has a 25-second recharge. So you're going to hit a Templar's Verdict, and that's going to get 3 seconds. And then you're going to do any of your other holy power spenders, and it's going to reduce the cooldown by a lot. So this one I think is A tier. I'm not putting it in S tier because it's really not that good outside of PvP, but it's going to be so game breaking in PvP. And one of the other things to keep in mind though is that if you only care about PvP, if one of these things are only good in a, they're good in a specific situation, then you can probably bump it up a tier. So if you just care about PvP, then this one at Uther's Guard is an easy S tier. So that's the first 4. That's the generic ones. They just happen to fall that way. I didn't plan it that way. They just happen to fall one in each tier like that. None of them are terrible, but Badge of the Mad Paragon, or this one here, this is the Magistrate's Judgment. It's not that great. So let's look at the Ret-specific ones. So the first one is Badge of the Mad Paragon. Hammer of Wrath extends Avenging Wrath by 1 second and deals 25% additional damage. I think that this is pretty good. I think there's some other effects that are in play that may allow you to use Hammer of Wrath, specifically the next one. So I think in a situation where you could have both of these legendaries, I think that makes both of them better. But this one just as a standalone, I think is just okay. You can see Hammer of Wrath has a 7.5 second recharge, so it's going to extend Avenging Wrath by 1 second. You might be able to extend Avenging Wrath by an additional few seconds. It lasts 20 seconds, so you're going to be able to squeeze maybe 3 of these in there, depending on your haste. And so it's going to increase Avenging Wrath from 20 seconds to 23 seconds. So, I mean, it's pretty good, but I don't think it's game-changing, and I don't think it's going to really be worth the slot, especially at the beginning of the expansion when you can only use one legendary. So I'm going to put this in a B tier. I think it's overall pretty good, but I don't think it's a game changer. The next one is Final Verdict. Replaces Templar's Verdict with Final Verdict. Devastating Strike that deals 194% of attack powers, holy damage, and seemingly it's the same amount of damage as Templar's Verdict. So I thought maybe it was going to be more, but it says Templar's Verdict is 194, and then Final Verdict is 194. So that's not great. It does have a pretty cool effect though, as far as the what the ability looks like. So that's cool. But the cool thing is it has a 50% chance to activate Hammer of Wrath and reset its cooldown. So I think that that's going to be pretty good. 50% chance. You're going to be hitting a lot of Templar's Verdict, and as we saw above the Judgment, there's another one up here that gives you a only 50% chance on Judgment to reduce the cooldown. So I'm not wild about these 50% chance things. I think that coin flip is just adding more RNG in there. That's not necessarily it's gonna make your rotation less predictable, which might be okay if you like that kind of playstyle. I prefer the more predictable kind of benefits. But so I think this one's pretty good. I think it's kind of on par with the other one. I don't think it's A tier. I think it's a pretty good one though. And like I said, I think if you could use the Badge of the Mad Paragon and Final Verdict, then I think that would be those two probably. When you can use both of them together, they will probably move both of them up to A tier. But at the beginning of Shadowlands, you're only going to be able to use one legendary, so I don't think it's going anywhere for now. Relentless Inquisitor. Spending Holy Power grants you 12 haste for 12 seconds per Holy Power spent. Stacking up to 20 times. So you're going to stack this up pretty quickly. And I think that this one is actually, really good. I think it's passive. I think there's no RNG in it. And the haste is going to be really good to keep those cooldowns off. And the only thing that I don't like about it is it's not a percent of haste, so it's not going to be something that scales well as you go forward into the expansion, since it's just a flat amount of haste. So it's going to flat give you basically 240 haste. Now I looked online, I couldn't figure out how much haste that really is, what percentage haste that is. So I think it's going to be a fair amount though. So I think this is a pretty good legendary. It's definitely not a crazy amount. You can see it's from a BFA Azerite power, so it's definitely a decent one, but it's not blowing anybody away. I don't think it's on par with Uther's Guard or from Dusk Till Dawn. So I'm going to put it right here within the B tier. So this next one, the last one, is Tempest of the Lightbringer. Projects Divine Storm forward 20 yards, damaging all enemies in its path. Also increases damage dealt by Divine Storm by 20%. So this one, I think, is actually going to be really good because this is going to help Ret in those situations where you can't quite reach your target, or there's someone running away, or there's just a lot of different situations where this is going to be really, really useful. I think you're going to be careful using this in PvP because you're not going to want it to break CC, but I think for PvP you're probably going to be using Uther's Guard anyway. So, but I think for PvE, for Mythic Dungeons, this is going to be really good. For raids, this is going to be really good. It's gonna be really helpful. It's sort of like indirectly helps your mobility, right? Because you can you'll have a little bit of a longer range on your Divine Storm. It'll still hit everybody in an area, but then it's going to move forward. So I think this one's actually really, really good. I'm really excited about this one, and it just flat increased your damage by 20%. So that's a huge portion of your AoE damage, which is going to be really important in PvE, and PvP probably less so. But I think that's really good. I think I'm going to put it in an A tier. I think this is going to be really, really good. I think that cleave damage is going to be really important, especially when the number of targets we can hit is capped in a lot of ways, except for Consecration. But with Divine Storm, I think that'll allow you to hit more targets and hit them farther away. So this is where the tier list landed. I didn't see any of them in D tier. This Magistrate Judgment one is just not all that great. I think it's not been. I'm kind of hope it gets fixed a little bit, but I'm actually kind of okay with how this landed. And as I mentioned, I think some of these are going to move around a little bit as the expansion goes along, and we can hopefully we'll be able to equip multiple legendaries as we go along. I don't know what Blizzard's plan is there. They haven't given us any insight into that, but if they do. Let us equip multiple ones, and we'll have to revisit this list because that will change it somewhat. But for now, if you're into PvP, I would probably pick Uther's Guard all day long. If you're into PvE, I would probably pick between From Dusk Till Dawn or Tempest of the Lightbringer. Those are my top choices here. I think the ones in the B tier are all pretty good. It kind of depends on your playstyle, and it depends on you know where your gear is like. One of the things that we're going to see with Shadowlands is some secondary stat changes and things like that. So I was kind of looking up this a little bit to kind of see how that was going to benefit. So I guess depending on how your gear lands and things like that, this one might end up being better. So if you're not at that soft cap where you start to get diminishing returns on haste, then that could make Relentless Inquisitor a little bit better. But for a legendary, I don't think it's all that game breaking. But I think 6% damage taken and 6% damage, 6% less damage taken, sorry, and 6% more damage done, I think is really, really good. I think that's going to scale as we go forward into the expansion. I think that's going to be a no-brainer. It's going to be kind of like an easy one to do. So that's where the tier list lands, guys. If you made it this far, I appreciate you watching the video. Be sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.